I was 10 years old when I first experienced true fear. It wasn't the kind of fear that comes from ghosts or monsters, but something more real, more suffocating. It was the fear of being completely alone. Alone in a house that suddenly didn't feel like mine anymore. Alone with the shadows that seemed to grow longer and darker with each passing second. My parents had gone to a dinner party, leaving me in charge of the house for the first time. They'd assured me I was old enough, that I'd be fine. And for the first hour, I was. I watched TV, ate snacks, and even felt a little proud of how grown-up I was. But then, the power flickered. Just for a moment. Just long enough to make me look over my shoulder at the darkened hallway behind me. I told myself it was nothing, maybe a gust of wind outside, or the old wiring acting up again. But as I sat there, staring at the blank screen, the silence around me grew heavier. I felt the weight of it pressing down on me, filling every corner of the room. And then I heard it. A faint creak, like a footstep, coming from upstairs. Every part of me froze. My rational brain told me it was just the house settling. Old wood creaks, right? But my heart was racing, pounding so loud I was sure whoever, or whatever, was upstairs could hear it. I wanted to call my parents, but my phone was upstairs, in my room, and the thought of going up there felt impossible. I sat there, motionless, for what felt like hours. But the noises didn't stop. A door creaked open, then closed again, and then silence. Complete and utter silence. The kind that makes you question if you're even awake. Finally, I gathered the courage to move. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I was letting my imagination get the best of me. But as I tiptoed toward the hallway, every shadow seemed to shift, every corner seemed to hide something watching me. I stood at the base of the staircase, staring up into the darkness. The upstairs hallway seemed endless, a tunnel of shadows stretching beyond what my eyes could see. I gripped the banister tightly, my knuckles turning white, and forced myself to take a step. One creaking step after another, the sound echoing like a drumbeat in the silent house. Halfway up the stairs, I stopped. There it was again. A sound, soft, almost imperceptible, like a whisper carried by the air. It wasn't words, but it was rhythmic, steady, and coming from my room. My heart felt like it might explode, but I pressed on, each step heavier than the last. When I reached the top, the air felt different. Thicker, colder. I wanted to run back down, but something pulled me forward. My room was just at the end of the hall, the door slightly ajar. That was odd. I always closed it before going downstairs. Always. I inched closer, my feet moving on their own, and pushed the door open. The room was exactly as I'd left it. The bed neatly made, the desk cluttered with schoolbooks, and my phone lying on the nightstand. But something was wrong. I could feel it. It was like the air itself was vibrating with unease. I reached for my phone, my hands trembling, and unlocked it. No new notifications. No calls. Nothing to explain the uneasiness curling in my chest. As I stood there, I felt it, a breeze, soft but noticeable, brushing against the back of my neck. My window was closed, the curtains still. So where was it coming from? I turned slowly, my eyes scanning every corner of the room. And then I saw it. The closet door. It was open just a crack, though I knew I'd closed it earlier. My instincts screamed at me to run, to get out of the house, but my feet wouldn't move. I felt like I was anchored to the floor, my curiosity and terror locked in a silent battle. Taking a deep breath, I stepped closer to the closet. My hand reached out, fingers brushing against the cold wood of the door. Slowly, I pulled it open, inch by inch. It was empty. Just rows of hanging clothes and the faint smell of fabric softener. Relief washed over me, but only for a moment, because as I turned to leave, I noticed something on the floor. A single sheet of paper, folded neatly, lying right where I'd been standing. I hadn't seen it when I walked in. Where had it come from? I picked it up, my hands trembling. Written in shaky, uneven letters was a single sentence: "You're not alone." My vision blurred as the words sank in. I dropped the paper and stumbled back, my heart racing faster than ever. That's when the light flickered again, and the house plunged into darkness. The darkness swallowed everything. I couldn't see my hands in front of my face, let alone the room around me. My breathing quickened, each inhale sharp and shallow. I fumbled for my phone on the nightstand, desperate for its glow. When the screen finally lit up, its dim light barely cut through the blackness, but it was enough to reveal the piece of paper on the floor. It had moved. The note was no longer where I'd dropped it. Now it rested in the center of the room, unfolded as though someone, or something, had placed it there. My phone buzzed suddenly, the vibration startling me. I glanced at the screen, expecting a text or call, but there was nothing. No messages, no missed alerts. Just the home screen staring back at me. That's when the sound started. It was faint at first, almost imperceptible, but it grew louder, sharper, until it was unmistakable. The sound was coming from the closet I'd just checked. My pulse thundered in my ears as I aimed the phone's light toward the door. It was shut now, completely closed. I knew I hadn't touched it after opening it earlier. I stepped back instinctively, my legs shaking beneath me. The air around me felt heavy, oppressive, as though the room itself were pressing down on me. I wanted to scream, to call for help, but my voice wouldn't come. All I could do was stare as the doorknob on the closet began to twist. Slowly, deliberately, it turned, as if someone on the other side was trying to open it. Suddenly, the closet door flew open with a violent force, slamming against the wall. My phone's light flickered, illuminating the empty space inside. But something was wrong. The clothes were swaying, as if disturbed by an invisible hand, and the shadows in the back seemed deeper, darker than they should have been. I stepped closer, compelled by some force I couldn't explain. Then I saw it. Just for a moment, in the light of my phone. A shape, barely discernible, retreating into the shadows at the back of the closet. It was small, childlike, with features I couldn't quite make out. But its presence was unmistakable. It lingered there, watching me, as though daring me to come closer. My knees buckled, and I stumbled back, hitting the edge of my bed. The door to the closet slowly creaked shut again, as if of its own accord. The sound echoed in the silence, and then everything was still. For a long moment, I couldn't move. I just sat there, clutching my phone, its light illuminating the closed door. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I'd seen, or thought I'd seen. But deep down, I knew. I wasn't alone in that house. Hours passed, or at least that's what it felt like. I couldn't bring myself to sleep, not after what I had seen, or imagined. I kept telling myself it wasn't real, that it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But the unease in my chest wouldn't subside. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the closet door, waiting for it to move again. The house was silent now, eerily so, as if it were holding its breath. I checked my phone for the time. It was nearly 4 a.m. The glow of dawn would come soon, and with it, the promise of safety. At least, that's what I hoped. But as I sat there, clinging to the faint light of my phone, a realization dawned on me. The note was gone. I hadn't touched it, hadn't moved from my spot, but the piece of paper that had unnerved me so much was no longer in the center of the room. My eyes scanned the floor, desperate to find it, to prove to myself that it hadn't disappeared. But it was nowhere to be found. Instead, something else caught my attention. A shadow, faint but unmistakable, stretched across the carpet. It didn't belong to me. My breath hitched, and I froze, unable to move, unable to look away. The shadow shifted, growing longer, reaching toward me. I clutched the edges of my blanket, as though it could protect me from whatever was lurking in that darkness. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the shadow receded, vanishing into the dim corners of the room. The first rays of sunlight finally broke through the window, spilling into the room and chasing away the night. I exhaled deeply, my chest heaving with relief. The fear lingered, but the presence, whatever it had been, seemed to be gone. I told myself it was over, that the morning light had saved me. But deep down, I knew better. As I gathered my things to leave, I caught one last glimpse of the closet door. It stood slightly ajar, as if mocking me, and there, on the floor, was the note, folded neatly, waiting for me to pick it up. I didn't dare touch it. Instead, I walked out of the room, out of the house, and never looked back. But even now, years later, I can still feel it, the weight of that shadow, the silence of that night. And sometimes, when I'm alone, I still hear the faint sound of that closet door creaking open.